text messages and your chats inside of the chat here on the Jordy Culotta Show. But Jacques is with us here on this Wednesday. Jacques, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Good morning. SEC West champs going to Atlanta.
Unreal. I saw you yesterday in the press conference, and the first thing you asked me when I saw you is you're going to Atlanta. And I mean, I had to kind of almost like sit here. We got 2 weeks left of the regular season, and LSU's already stamped their ticket to represent the West here in Brian Kelly's first season. I mean, Jacques, you've been there since day one. How about this story? I mean, how big is this story? What do you think this story is going to be ultimately when we look back on it in a couple of years and say, wow, I mean, Kelly came in here, 38 scholarship players, first year he's in the West, he's in Atlanta.
I think it's going to be about guys getting on board, about getting part of the transition, buying in with the new head coach. You heard Kelly on Monday reference Micah Baskerville like it's a guy who, when I came here, I heard he was a knucklehead. He didn't go to class. He didn't do this and that. He's gotten on board and graduated and been a leader on the team. Certainly guys that were part of that Texas Bowl last year had to look around and say, I came here to be part of things like 2019, not, getting whipped by Kansas State.
Absolutely.
In an empty stadium in Houston. So I think one thing he talked about all along was he wanted guys who wanted to be here when they attacked the transfer portal and whatnot. And what's been different this year than last year, obviously, besides the wins and losses, has been, you haven't had the guys that have gotten injured, they've rehabbed and they've come back. There hasn't been the I don't want to speak anything to existence. It's like talking about a no-hitter or whatnot, but you haven't had the opting out and stuff like that. What did a lot of people say after LSU lost to Florida State? Kayshawn's out of here in 3 games. He's not going to be. And he's kind of reinvented himself, like there haven't been the 60, 70-yard touchdowns, but he's made a lot of tough catches across the middle. He made the biggest catch on Saturday at Arkansas, that 26-yarder that set up Josh Williams' touchdown. And, he's made a lot of tough catches in traffic. So I just think it's the coaching has resonated. And obviously Brian Kelly is at the top of it, but the staff beneath him, it's amazing when you go through an LSU football program and you look at the staff and you look at this machine of people, that's like 10 people across and 5 down, all that from nutrition to strength and conditioning. It's a machine. It takes a lot of people to make this happen. So it's a fun team. It is ironic. I think the last time we were at SEC Media Days was in 2018 in Atlanta. The last time was in Atlanta. They were picked 5th in the West, and they won 10 games, and they won a Fiesta Bowl. This team is similar, but they've obviously gone a step further in the fact that they beat Alabama at home, and they're going to be in the SEC championship. But like that team, they're going to have a chance to play in a very nice bowl game no matter what, it appears, and they've surprised a lot of people.
You're also a great reference for this in the history of how much LSU football you watched. How good is Harold Perkins? And how much have you ever seen a freshman that's comparable to the impact that he makes?
It definitely the biggest defensive impact since Tyrann Mathieu, and that goes back over a decade. I mean, Tyrann's last year was in 2011, right?
Yep. So,
no, I mean, it's got to be maddening for opposing offenses when they're trying to pass protect, and this 40 keeps flying in left and right and wrecking our plays. Sat down with Mason Taylor yesterday, courtesy of Gordon McKernan, and he talked about, I'm sitting on the bench and I'm watching. Oh, Harold just made a play. Oh, Harold makes another play the next play. I mean, he was amazed sitting there watching it from the sideline. So, yeah, LSU's offense was in the deep freeze at Arkansas and couldn't get a first down to run out the clock and, only scored 1 touchdown. And Harold Perkins, watching it, that last play on the field, I thought it was an incomplete pass, but the replay clearly showed it was a fumble. And so, yeah, I mean, he kind of saved him. Survive in advance thanks to Harold Perkins.
Absolutely. Josh Williams is another story on this team that I think deserves a lot of spotlight, or at least to have his story told because of the perseverance he showed of just sticking with the game. But now here he is playing and the primary back for LSU, chasing an SEC title. What have you made of covering him the last 5 years?
I watched the interview we did with Brian Kelly, and we were talking about running backs. This is back in May, and talking about running back by committee. And I think he said something like the most valuable reps are the guys want to get the 3rd down reps, because that's when the blocking comes into play and everything. And Josh Williams has encompassed all of that. John Emery probably has the most electric stuff. We saw that when he got hit in the backfield against Auburn and somehow got in the end zone. We saw that the cutback against Alabama, and he's made a lot of big plays for LSU. Josh Williams just really encompasses everything, and the blocking, and just a great story. I know his family sometimes gets a little sensitive about the walk-on tag, and they feel like he could have been a scholarship player at Houston and some other places, but he was a walk-on here, and has done a tremendous job. I at work, there's some mothers at work who have kids that are coming up and being athletes, and when I tell them this guy's a 3.5 student, he's been on the dean's list, they're like, that's great. They like to hear that kind of stuff, because I think a lot of parents don't want their kids just invested in sports, and sports is the only way I can go. I think he's a great example also for doing things outside of football as well. And I think his parents told me that if he is going to graduate, he's going to have 2 years left of eligibility. So that'd be interesting. Yeah, be interesting if he decides to go pro or not.
Right.
But yeah, he's been a tremendous story, and just everything you want in a young man on your team.
You asked Kelly a couple of weeks ago about Walker Howard and just his development.
My apologies on that, but no, I mean, it was just.
Do you expect to see him this weekend?
Yeah, that's a good. I haven't even thought about that. The spread is interesting.
It is
14.5. LSU's favorite. I mean, it is. That could mean a one touchdown game in the fourth quarter, and we punch one across and win by 14. But I mean, yeah, he hasn't played, so they could play him a lot, and he wouldn't lose a red shirt. So that's a good point. Yeah. I'd like to see it for sure. I would also like to see, certainly you don't want to think that LSU took a step back with 86 yards passing, and that Georgia's got a blueprint to, kick your butt in Atlanta. So, these last two games are very important. You want to go 10-2. Jordy, I was looking it up. I don't think outside of the 2019 team, LSU has won 10 games in the regular season since 2011.
Yeah, I think it was like. Yeah.
I'm not talking about winning a bowl game and then winning 10. I'm talking about winning 10 in the regular season.
It was 2012.
Yeah,
I think it's been in 10 years.
You're right, 2012, because they lost to Clemson and they finished 10-3.
Right
now, a couple of times they had a game canceled. McNeese got canceled; they would have won that one. And then I think the big Joe Oliva tiff with Florida, the 2016 Hurricane, they lost to Western Kentucky, I think, or somebody. They lost that game.
Right.
But they haven't won 10 games in the regular season outside of 2019 since 2012.
And I think that's a great stat to orchestrate and to illustrate of why Brian Kelly is here, right? Because LSU, think about that. I mean, in that 20-year run where they had a gap of nearly 10 years of winning 10 games, they were the best team maybe ever put together in the sport. So you kind of get blinded by they struggled for the last 6 or 7 years. But even before that, they go to the game in 11. They win 1-7, win 1-3. But it's just been the up and down roller coaster of you can win a natty, but you might have a tough season to get to 10 wins too. So, I mean, Brian Kelly has been brought in here to kind of do exactly what he's doing right now.
I had a conversation with Kobe Delahousse, a former LSU kicker who made the field goal in the Swamp to beat the Gators in 14,
That's right.
The 50-yarder that week when LSU went to the Swamp. I talked to him, and we were sitting around talking. He goes, man, in 2016, we were loaded. We had Kendall Beckwith coming back. We had Tre'Davious White. Look at the defense. Arden Key in his prime. Devon Gottschall.
Jamal Adams.
I mean, all these guys on defense, and they somehow lost 4 games that year.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one time I went to the NFL draft and covered it in person. It was in Philadelphia. I think LSU had 3 first-round draft picks. Jamal,
Leonard,
Tre'Davious, and Leonard. And it's like, how'd you guys lose 4 games this year? And so it was that kind of thing where the talent was minimized to a Texas Bowl or a Music City Bowl or whatever it was towards the end there. And so now, yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, Miles Frazier was part of the interviews last night. He's got 2 years left, as well. And just talking about, Will Campbell and Emory Jones and Mason Taylor and Harold Perkins and all these young talent. And then now with the transfer portal, how many people are going to get out of the transfer portal now that they're doing this?
Right.
So it's exciting.
It is. It's a good time right now to be an LSU football fan. I mean, it feels like the stock daily is just soaring through the ceiling. You sat down with Mason Taylor. What a freshman year. I mean, of all these freshmen that have come in and contributed, right? I mean, I think everybody anticipated Campbell. People at some point anticipated Emory Jones to pop. And even Harold Perkins, I think in the offseason, people knew he was going to make an impact, not to not to this level. Nobody was talking about Mason Taylor. He was almost a necessity to get on the field just because the position had no manpower there. Now it feels like LSU's got a bona fide tight end.
Yeah, I think when we went into camp in August, you would hear kind of Brian Kelly start to say, "This Mason Taylor, we're gonna have to play this guy. He's that good." And his journey, from the first game of the year where he catches the ball across the middle and has the wits to get out of bounds and not try to run over these guys to get the touchdown. He sets up Jeray Jenkins' touchdown at the end, and then he has, as he said, a missed assignment on the extra point, and he's crouched down after the game looking around like, "Oh, how did we just lost, to catching the 2-point conversion against Alabama." Yeah. One of the biggest catches in LSU history, one of the biggest moments in LSU history. A true freshman. I asked him, how do you not think about the enormity of that pass coming your way, And it's muscle memory. We practice it. Why not catch it in the game? And, and it was his mom's moment after the game. His dad has been talked about a lot, and rightfully so. But after the Alabama game, when he and his mother were in tears, that was her moment and a great moment, and so many people enjoyed that. And so it was also funny that, we're so football dummies. Like Darren and I have been talking about that play they ran to beat Alabama. It was the same play they ran against Ole Miss. It was in the same end zone, the rollout. He goes, "No, it's completely different." that was 14 personnel, 4 tight ends. This was blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, well, it was a rollout, and you threw it to the tight end. It's the same play.
Yeah, right. Nice try, exactly. TV guy.
Yeah, nice try, TV guy.
Right.
So, exactly. But, yeah, a great story, great kid.
How cold was it last Saturday?
We woke up, it was in the 20s.
Disgusting.
And they kicked off the game, and it was 35. It was bearable. I've been up there a lot worse. The worst that I've experienced was in 2014. Mm-hmm. That was the week after.
That was the night game, wasn't it?
Night game, yes.
It looked so miserable.
Yeah. That was the week after LSU should have beat Alabama at home. When Kendall Beckwith got the recovery and Vidal Alexander, they lost in overtime, and they go up to Arkansas, and I think Leonard Fournette had like
5 carries?
9 carries or 7 carries for 9 yards or something. They get shut out. Arkansas had a 17-game SEC losing streak. The fans rushed the field.
That's right.
I talked to the traveling Tigers. They said typically we'd have a bigger plane. We had like this small plane in the fourth quarter that we all looked around. "You guys ready to go?" "Yeah, let's go." And then they all left.
Wow. And Chad Morris.
That was Brett Bielema.
It was Bielema.
Bielema was the head coach. I remember that because he talked about the boot. Like, there's some women that come up here and look at that thing and faint. Like it was this great, thing. Like the boot, man. We all talk about that boot, And so that's always that thing when you go up there too. When you watch the local TV, they are so. This is our biggest home game of the year, and we want to beat LSU more than anybody else. And it's always been hard to counter that for LSU, and it's always after the Alabama game. It is just a tricky game, and it was pretty miserable. And the weather I don't think had an impact on the game. It was sunny, and they had figured out their ice on the on the field and everything. They looked like broken glass all on the sideline when they finally got it off. But we were walking back to the hotel carrying our gear, and some Arkansas fan goes, "What did y'all think about that game?" And Darren goes, "It was awful." And it's like, you're right, The overwhelming theme of the day was great. SEC champs heading to Atlanta, but that game, these two teams.
Let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, these two teams 2 years in a row have played a couple of oof.
Have you had a chance to see McMahon's team play, LSU basketball?
I watched their highlights on YouTube from the Arkansas State game. It looked like Ace Wolf had a big game there. Adam Miller, excuse me.
Yeah.
Had a big game the last time out. I watched some of Kim Mulkey on Sunday. That game was on TV. So, I do want to go watch. I've been so caught up in football, I hadn't really got a chance to see him in person yet, but I'd like to.
I know every year WAFB does a postseason special, a 30-minute special when the Tigers make it to Atlanta. What is have you started production planning?
I thought we were doing one. As of now, I don't think we're doing one. Now, maybe those salespeople have a conversation around say, oh, maybe we should do one of those. But from my understanding, there's not a whole lot that's going to be going on in Atlanta with LSU. I think there's like a Thursday media availability on a Zoom, and that's it.
Wow.
So I think maybe they're doing some stuff with the SEC network and stuff. But typically I thought, okay, we go to a press conference with the 2 head coaches. They stand there next to the trophy. But apparently that's not taking place. So I don't think LSU's getting to Atlanta until Friday. So there's not a whole lot going on there.
How do you see the power shifting in the SEC right now? Do you feel it kind of the continent's moving as the power? I mean, it seems like Georgia's sitting at the top of the hill right now, and has planted their flag and is going to stay there for a minute. But
Yeah.
when you see the West, what do you see?
Well, I think it'll be a very interesting offseason for Nick Saban. They lost 2 games. Now, look, they got beat on a field goal at the gun that got deflected at the line and barely made it over the goalpost, and they got beat on a 2-point conversion. Both times the fans rushed the field and everything. And so I don't want to, I think I've learned from history, every time somebody starts saying Nick Saban's getting too old and they're going downhill, he comes back and he knocks your teeth out. But he is 71 years old, and some of the changes – I think he's doing his best to go along with some of the changes in college football, but I think they've taken a toll. But yeah, I think Kirby right now, Kirby's in his 6th or 7th year at Georgia. It's funny to look back. You remember his first year, they almost lost to Nicholls State in overtime.
That's right.
Or at home.
Yeah, that was the former Rummel quarterback. What was his name?
Was it Forcade?
Forcade, yeah. Chase Forcade.
Lutcher had a guy on defense for Nicholls. I'm sorry I forgot his name, but he was great. But, yeah, they almost lost to Nicholls. So that shows you how, building programs and whatnot. And so he's got that thing up and running, and I think they're kind of the kings right now. Tennessee's coming up. It kind of brings you back to – remember in the 90s, the SEC East was kind of the you had Florida in their prime. You had Tennessee with Peyton Manning, and Georgia was kind of the third. And then the West was kind of at that time. But yeah, I think that Brian Kelly – and what he has done right away sends a big message. But Alabama's going to have an interesting offseason. It's clear that the fans hate these 2 coordinators that they have, Bill O'Brien and Golding.
Yeah.
Pete Golding on defense.
From Hammond.
He's from Hammond?
He's from Hammond.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. I know. Okay. Well. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if he, makes some changes there or whatever. But
do you anticipate major overhaul changes for Kelly's staff? Maybe guys being picked up for other jobs. I know that Cortez Hankton's name's popped up for a job over in Florida.
What I heard the other day was they better find a way to pay Matt House.
Yeah.
That people are going to be coming after him. And, I interviewed Matt Malk after the Alabama game, and he said, look, he goes, I know that 2-point conversion was big and all that. He said, the defense to me is the story. The defense keeping LSU in a lot of these games. Obviously, this past weekend you scored 13 points and you win.
Yeah.
Somehow. So I think Matt House's stock has really gone up. So
I agree. In fact, last night I named a finalist for the Broyles Award.
That's right.
As one of the top assistant coaches in college football. All right, Jacques, off today?
Yeah, you can't tell. No. I'm going over to Gordon's office again. And we're supposed to chat with a couple more LSU players. We'll get that up today. But, tomorrow and Thursday. And then Friday, man, it's going to be a second round of the high school playoffs. And it's going to be a cold one. We're in the deep freeze here with these unseasonable conditions. But we'll have Sportsline Friday night for you. And LSU and UAB over the weekend. I think the Saints have a home game against the Rams. I don't want to use the word disgusted, but kind of just disgusted. Their schedule has been – their
easy.
record, yeah.
It's been set up for them.
Yeah,
they're tough to watch, Jacques. I'm almost at a point where you knew you had to go through this point because of how much emphasis they put on winning in the last couple of years that Peyton and Breeze were there. The more that they were pushing and kicking the can back, right? Like they were in such a win now mode, which I said the other day while I was thinking about the Saints, how much I appreciated at the time. Right, I remember being in the middle of it and being like, screw 2022. We'll get there when we have to get there. Win now. And they just Nola no-called and Minnesota miracled their way kind of out of Super Bowl opportunities. And here you are kind of paying the piper for those days, really.
I remember all the criticism for Drew Brees in 2020. I would take a lot of those 29 out of 39, 291, 3-touchdown games from Drew Brees that they were getting in 2020. Even him at the end when he was limping to the finish line was giving them, something. But the quarterback situation is so like, who are we playing? What's the future? What are we doing here? And Dennis Allen, you don't want to jump on a guy too quick, but it's almost like I don't know, like Ed Orgeron to an extent where, okay, Ed Orgeron was bad at Ole Miss, but if we pair him with LSU, it'll be good. Okay, Dennis Allen, he was bad, but that's the Raiders. He'll be fine here as the head coach of the Saints, but then it's, okay, is he the overall issue here and not where he was at? And so
he seems very, apathetic. He seems very,
checked out.
I guess.
I have a former coworker. Her name is Farah, and she tweeted something great the other day. She goes, He's way too nonchalant in his post-game press conferences. I want his Sunday ruined just like mine.
Yeah, right. I mean,
know?
well, I mean, like, remember Peyton? Peyton was more pissed off about losing than anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, even when they won ugly, Peyton was pissed.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I appreciated about him, was that the fact that he was steaming the whole plane ride home. He was steaming the whole car ride back to the facility. They were going to get it right. And Allen's got none of the he's Ogeron's a great comparison, because how tiresome did it get of Ogeron? It's on me, I got to fix it. Allen's got these canned responses of, yeah, we got to get in there and we got to coach it up. It's like, come on, man. Like, how? Why? Well, like, what's gonna change? Like, are you pissed off that it's not working? Do you think they make a change after 1 year?
I'm not in that as much as, the Mike Triplets and Jeff Duncans of the world and Fletcher Mackles. I'd have to ask them a little bit. There was this rumor. I was told by a media person at one of the Saints home games this year that there's talk that Peyton would come back.
Oof.
Like,
don't tease me.
Like, he would recharge his batteries for 1 year. That's what he wanted to do, and he was going to maybe come back the following year. But I don't see him doing that if he doesn't have a quarterback. So, to your point about Peyton, I just remember sometimes I would time the post-game I'm like, how long was he up there? 3 minutes? Like, after a loss? The one I always remember.
Questions? None? Thanks. See ya.
He would squint like this. There was that one game they went to Detroit, and they went for it on 4th down or something. And Sal Palantonio, they lost. And Sal Palantonio was asking about, why didn't you punt? Ooh. And Peyton was like, 3.5 minutes left and 3 timeouts. That's like 7.5 minutes. Next question. Next smart question. And then you hear Sal, to flip the field, So.
Next question.
And he would always, like, if the question came from here, he would just, like, reflex turn in the opposite direction,
To flip the field. That's so good.
That was Peyton, man. I thought Peyton was great, like, off-season, training camp, blah, blah, blah. He was
the Pro-Am golf tournament, he was awesome.
Very personable. Before the NFC Championship game in 2019, he sat out there and talked to us for like an hour. I was like, man, this is the best he has ever been before they got shafted by the Rams. But, after a loss, that was it was rough.
It was like kind of must watch. Yeah, it was tough to be in the room, but it was always fun to go back and watch. Yeah. Who had the balls to ask the question? Sal Powell. To flip the field. Next question. All right, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be back. More of the Jordy Culotta Show.